All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us this morning or this afternoon, wherever you're logging in from. This webinar, this session from Ibica is what happened in pricing in Q3 2025. Have some familiar faces again, Mark Stiving, Karan Sood, and Ibica's Stephen Forth. Yeah, so we're going to do about an hour today, Q&A towards the end of the session if we have enough time. Comments and chats open, so feel free to throw in your comments as we do the intros with Karan, Mark, and Stephen. You can just throw in if you'd like where you're logging in from. And we'll, as usual, throw in the deck in an email, do a little bit of a deck and follow-up webinar session. So this is being recorded right now, and then we'll just edit it quickly post-webinar and have that sent out to you guys if you're missing out. So we're sorry if we're keeping you from early Black Friday deals today, but hopefully not anything that you're looking for does not sell out. But I'll move on to the intros. Mark, you start off, then Karan, and then Steven, just a little intro. I mean, I know a lot of people probably joining know you guys, but you never know.
Yeah, so the more I think about, my name's Mark Stiving, the more I think about pricing, the more I start to realize that the single thing I focus on is how customers value products that we buy, and then how companies should use that. So I probably focus on that more than anything, and we'll see if that topic comes up at all today as we have great conversations.
And Mark didn't mention it, but Mark has the must follow pricing podcast. Uh,
It's
Liam, maybe you can drop a link into chat. But Mark has a truly uh, critical podcast for anyone who is interested in pricing and surrounding issues.
Thank you, Stephen. You just say that because you're a guest like every other week.
You guys, it just seems like you guys love talking about it. Thanks for having me. My name is obviously Karan Sood. I am the senior director for pricing at Rakuten Kobo, and I'm also the founder of Pricing Tribe. For those who follow me, know I am very passionate about pricing and always have been. I like to empower our pricing people with knowledge, with case, everything that I've learned over the years that I can share with you guys. And I obviously, from a pricing point of view, want to make sure that we are in the circles where revenue decisions are made and are able to shape the kind of strategy that we think we are able to shape to shape, and always looking for ways to increase pricing and make more margin. So hopefully that comes up today, and looking forward to this discussion.
And Karan, can you just say a couple of more words about Pricing Tribe for people who are not aware of it?
Yeah, so Pricing Tribe is an up and coming community of pricing professionals. It's purpose built. It's not like LinkedIn, how LinkedIn is very open. You can't really have the right conversation in the open. You can't really go deeper. Pricing Tribe is a purpose-built community closed on a separate platform, which is designed around pricing people and the conversations we would like to have, like discussions around common themes that are happening, AI discussion around billing and discussion around pricing models, value stories, all sorts of things that we sort of can't discuss too much in the open, and also just share wins, losses, how to do something, recommendations, jobs, everything and anything pricing, to sort of just empower pricing people in general. We are going to open up to a beta group, which includes you, Stephen, obviously, in the coming days, I would say at this point. I think when I opened up registrations, I was hoping for like 30, 40 people. At this point, I think we're close to 170 registrations and applications. Uh, and I'm going to try and just get people in, a cohort by cohort so that they have the best experience inside. So yeah,
Great.
that's Pricing Tribe.
Thank you, Karan. Just very briefly, Stephen Forth, co-founder of Ibica and one of the principals at Value IQ. Value IQ is a company that is bringing to market a set of agents that will help people execute on value-based selling, on value-based pricing and deal pricing, and down the road on the design of pricing models. And my focus has always been this sort of intersection of innovation, value, and pricing. And for, I think, obvious reasons. Right now, I am fairly obsessed with the way that generative AI is fueling and accelerating innovation. Something that I don't know that it's going to come up in today's session, but I think we need to start talking about more is the impact of generative AI on the buying process. There's a lot of talk about generative AI in the sales process and the pricing process, but really, sales and pricing have to be aligned with how people buy. And I think generative AI is changing the buying process quickly, and that we are under indexing on that. So we'll see if that comes up. But why don't we roll forward? So we're going to look at token and credit-based pricing. Be interesting to get Mark and Karan's views on this. Then we're going to spend some time on the spread of vibe coding and what it means for pricing. Uh, Time permitting, we'll look at some of the big changes in pricing by some of the big players. And again, if we have time, I think it's worth doubling down again on what's happening with cost of compute. It's a good time for an update on the cost of compute and what that means for pricing. But let's start with token and credit-based pricing. So I'm going to ask Karan. Karan, when you hear credit-based pricing, how would you describe what it means?
So is time is like time what an outcome customer wants from any service, like, and it can be a minute outcome of a bigger service, and tying it to the usage of credits that are eventually tied to the cost structure and the infrastructure that basically is used to run that little outcome that you want. For example, is as simple as saying, hey, I am Miro, for example, and people want to design a dashboard or design something, and using a credit-based model, when they implement something, it's basically using certain number of credits that are predefined with a cost structure that's predefined that goes all the way back to the infrastructure costs, all added up to sort of dif to get to that outcome in a way. So that, in my mind, is credit-based pricing, but also is I sort of say it because I know pricing well, but people who are users obviously don't understand sometimes because how many credits are we talking about? How many are used, etc. So there's a challenge there for sure in getting people used to it because it's obviously very new with the way AI has come up and the way AI is getting costed out and implemented. So
Mark, so Karan, that sounds to me almost like credit-based pricing is a fancy way to say cost plus pricing. Uh,
it is.
Mark, do you have some thoughts on that?
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with that. A lot of what Karan just said, I would agree with, but not completely. Here's my thought on what credit-based pricing really is. It's simply a prepayment plan for whatever you want to charge for. So you could think about tokens, and tokens are this measure of compute that's, somebody knows what the heck it means. I certainly don't. Right. And so I could prepay you for 10,000 tokens, or I could say, hey, I'm going to pay you for tokens as I use them. And the difference between those is, am I using credits or not using credits? Right? Am I prepaying for it or paying for it after I've used it? And I say it that way because it turns out I could use credit-based pricing for any pricing metric you come up with. Right? So if I choose the pricing metric is going to be a number of minutes on a cell phone, I can prepay those minutes, which is what we always did for a very long period of time. And so I don't think credit-based pricing is a pricing metric. I don't even think it's a pricing model. I certainly think it's a strategy or a tactic that we use, and there's lots of benefits from it. But it isn't the pricing metric. It's just a payment plan.
Interesting. So I've spent the last few weeks working on the pricing for Value IQ. And Value IQ has credit-based pricing, and shared a little bit of our thought process about it in this morning's Ibica blog post. Liam, maybe you can drop a link to that blog post into the chat. And there's definitely a tension between cost and value in credit-based pricing. Should you base the price for a credit so that it tracks cost, or should you base the price for a credit so that it tracks value? And how do you keep those aligned? So that's one of the sort of critical questions around credit-based pricing. I think that the reason that credit-based pricing is being adopted is because people are not sure. So credit-based pricing is being adopted extensively across AI agents. And I think one reason for it, one reason is the cost of compute, as what Karan was saying. But I think another reason is that people are not really sure what use cases are going to drive adoption, and they're not really sure about the value of those use cases, and they're bringing lots of different innovations to market. And credit-based pricing allows you to kill many birds with one stone. It gives you a way to price where users can use the credits in different ways. So it's very fungible. It allows for different use cases to emerge. It makes it easy to price new innovations as they come to market. Um, allows for a lot of flexibility. It also makes it easier to adjust your pricing. So people tend to be very aware of and focused on the dollar figure. In my experience, looking at data that I can see, people don't pay anywhere near as much attention to how many credits that they're getting for those dollars and what they can use those credits for. And I'm not going to name names publicly here today. I may sometime in the future, but I can think of a half dozen companies that are rapidly iterating and testing on their pricing models, not by changing the dollar number that appears in their pricing page, but in the fine print as they, how many credits do you have and what can you use them for?
So,
Yeah.
so Stephen, real quickly, in B2C, we call that shrinkflation.
And,
Yeah, but I don't think that that's always the case. Sometimes they're rebalancing too.
yeah.
So yeah, yes, Mark, I think that's happening, but I also think that sometimes they are just sort of starting to understand things better and are rebalancing the
Yeah.
credit systems.
And,
Yeah.
and I think it's got like this is a life cycle of a product. Like any product, like even if we talk about any of our own, like if you talk about like any physical products, SaaS products back in the days when it first came out, no one really knew how to price any of those products. So the easy thing to do was based upon costs. And from a finance, from any company, any SaaS company, anyone who's making an AI product, who's burning through cash, the easiest way to recoup that cash is to basically make sure whatever your cost, whatever is taking to cost, whatever is costing you to run the product is getting back in terms of, the cost per token or etc. I think the issue, as you pointed out, Stephen, is that there's a lack of like what exactly is this doing? How are people even using it? That's why there's this pools of credits, where people are like, hey, we'll use it and we'll figure out what outcome will it generate. And I think in the future, some of these credit-based pricing will evolve into something else when they fine-tune exactly how customers are using their AI, for example, and what outcome. Right now, the outcome is very vague. You go on any product like and what outcome will I get with Canva once I start using the AI feature, which I just started using, and it's a bit unclear. So I think that'll evolve. But I think it's more than just a billing thing at this point, because I think eventually everyone is trying to figure out how many tokens for what, and that's sort of moving towards that outcome.
Okay, so I'm going to defend
Yeah.
my billing statement, but I'm going to agree with you in the following sense, Karan. I absolutely agree that the reason we're using credit-based pricing is both our costs are uncertain and the value delivery is uncertain. And so it's impossible to do value-based pricing, and so we're trying to find a way to put our arms around this. And so
Yeah.
what's going to happen in the near future is companies are using, we'll call it credit-based pricing, to learn how is it that my customers are using my product? How are they getting value from my product? How much is it costing me to deliver that value to my customers? And the companies that are able to do that will switch away from credit-based pricing towards value-based, usage-based, something else that is meaningful and useful to them. And then, we're back to something I talk about all the time, which is platforms versus solutions. So what I just described to you is what I would call a solution company. I now know how you're going to use it, what value you're going to get from it approximately. But people who are doing platforms, so if you think about OpenAI or Claude or any of those other, they're going to be platforms forever. They have no choice but to sell. A, they're pricing a platform with many, many, many different solutions, and so it's likely they will always be credit-based or token-based pricing.
Yeah, I think the visibility that, and I think people are touching it on the comments is like, what is that credit buying? And I think that's what a company need to really work hard on. Like, how many credits does it take to run one query? What kind of query? Does it take 10 credits? Like, I wipe code a lot, and then I see sometimes one query will not consume any credit, and there's a query that just ate up like 15 credits to run something and build something, and I'm like, this is the part where companies really need to say, what does the credit buy you and how many outcomes is it or what kind of things you're buying? And I think that's where the challenge for salespeople also is right now who are selling it and to defining that and making it make sense for the procurement people. So
So I'd like us to come back to this in a future session in 2026. Maybe we may need to wait until around this time in 2026. I think it's going to take some time for this to clarify. But I think we're looking at three possibilities here. So one is that vibe coding is a bit of a flash in the pan. And as Mark said, it's a symptom of the early stage nature of a lot of these generative AI and agent applications. And as we understand more, credit-based pricing will fade away and to be replaced with other forms of pricing, value-based, outcome-based, and so on. That's one possible future. Second possible future is what Karan suggested, which is vibe coding is an evolutionary step on the way to something else. So it's not going to revert back to conventional pricing models. Some new pricing models are going to emerge from credit-based pricing, and we don't quite know what those are yet. And then a third possibility, which is I think what Brandon Hickey from LinkedIn was discussing on our last webinar, and maybe Liam, you can drop a link to that webinar into chat as well, is that credit-based pricing is going to become the new standard, and that it may even get to the point where credits become fungible across platforms, and that the big platform vendors like Agentforce, OpenAI, Oracle, etc., have enforced credit-based pricing systems that can be used across multiple agents from different vendors. So I see those as three possible futures, and we should remember that all possibilities could occur in different parts of the market. But let's sort of footnote that or flag that as something that we want to come back to in 2026. And
And Stephen, I'd love to hear you define, and Karan can do this too, but when you say credit-based pricing, are you talking about tokens essentially? Or let's pretend I'm FinAI, I could sell you completed service calls by credits.
mhm.
And so are we talking about that type of credit-based pricing as well, or just the fact that we're uncertain, so we want to cover our costs, and so we're going to use credit-based pricing to cover our token costs?
So all right. So I don't think credit-based pricing necessarily has to be cost-based. Although I believe that it is in about 70 to 80% of the pricing that I see out there right now. But just to look at Value IQ, in order to come up with the credit-based pricing for Value IQ, I first used Value IQ to generate a value model for Value IQ, which was only partially successful because Value IQ is still very new, so the value model was a bit patchy. Um, I then validated that value model in conversations with people. And I figured out, okay, what actions do we want to charge credits for? Because we don't want to, I write this up in the blog post,
Mhm.
but basically, I tried to align actions with value, uh, so that an action that was high value cost more credits, and an action that was lower value cost fewer credits, regardless of the cost. Um, but then, some of these actions actually do have significant costs associated with them because they're calling third-party applications. So costs did creep back into it. And then to make my life more difficult, Value IQ is bringing to market two different agents: a sales coach agent that helps salespeople use value models and value-based selling, and a pricing analyst agent. And down the road, I want credits, at least within the Value IQ ecosystem, to be fungible, so that the cost of a credit for the pricing analyst agent will be the same as the cost of a credit for the sales coaching agent. And then we have other agents that we're planning to roll out in 2026, so that you can buy a bucket of tokens. And as Mark said, prepay for a bucket of tokens, and then use them as you see fit across the different Value IQ agents. And more granularly than that, for the different actions that create value that you can take for those agents. I said that very badly, but Mark, you're good at restating my mucky language in more articulate ways. But that's what I see credit-based pricing. It's a way to price actions based on the value of the action, and to have it fungible across multiple agents and types of actions.
Yeah, I think the fungibility is something we hadn't talked about yet today, but I think it's really powerful. Even if you are able to predict value, having fungibility is really important. So,
Yeah, and I think that's actually one of the main drivers for credit-based pricing. But we could spend the rest of the hour on that, um, on this theme. But Liam, why don't we go on to the next slide? Just wanted to summarize some research that we did on credit-based pricing. And these are the main objections that you see to it, and broken down by different roles. So this is research that we did primarily using LinkedIn. The objections that you see are credit-based. People aren't familiar with it, and people like to buy pricing models that they know and understand. The second objection was that it's not predictable. I think that's largely based on a misunderstanding of how to design good credit-based pricing. But anyway, that's what people objected to. A third is complexity, and credit-based pricing systems can be complex for the user to understand, as Karan was just commenting around vibe coding, and they can also be complex to design, as I've experienced over the last few weeks. I've designed a few of these systems now, and they are more difficult to design than conventional pricing models if you want to do it well. Revenue recognition, you can really muck up revenue recognition if you do a bad job in designing credit-based pricing. You could actually probably blow up your business if you get it wrong. And then finally, and this is because I'm a pricing guy and I like to talk about value-based pricing, couldn't help myself. The objection that credit-based pricing is just a way to disguise cost-based pricing. Uh, Not going to go too much into this. People can study the deck, these graphs, and read the blog post when they get it. But it was quite interesting to see, um, who had which objection, whether it was sales or rev ops or product people or the CFO or pricing. Not surprisingly, the CFO was most concerned with revenue recognition, so it was rev ops. Only pricing people cared about the fact that it was disguised as cost-based pricing. Few product people and a few salespeople, but really that's just a pet peeve of pricing people. And the RevOps people were primarily concerned, with complexity. Their life is already difficult enough. Why on earth are you guys making it more difficult? But anyway, let's go on to I think we've got a poll next, right, Liam? So this is the debate that Mark, Karan, and I were having earlier. Doesn't really reflect, the full conversation we had here. But love to hear people's opinions on this.
Am I allowed to vote?
No, you're not.
We're not
Dang
we're not
it.
allowed to vote. But in the meanwhile, I think something you touched in the last graph was like the complexity, the familiarity. I think it also depends upon like the what cycle and where in the purchase cycle or buying or usage cycle some of these issues arise. For example, from a user point of view, if I was building something, I'm a user of a tool that has a credit pool, etc. I I'm not really concerned about how it was priced. I think that's still a procure like the people you have to convince and people who are having a hard time right now with credit-based models and understanding that are procurement, are finance, are people who are basically or people are the business owner who's buying it or whose budget this is coming from because they lack the predictability sector. So this is why getting the clarity for procurement, be able to basically say, hey, here's exactly what the kind of outcomes you can expect with these many tokens, like and these many. And a lot of people, a lot of the world will go to some sort of a hybrid usage where and it is right now sort of hybrid in a way that people are still buying. You still got to buy a seat license, and it comes with certain amount of credits that are common towards 100 users. Now, in a previous world, seed is wasted if no one is using it, but in the credits, if no one using a credit, it's someone else will use it. So it sort of solves another problem, which is the usage of how there's going to be power users who use up, X% of the tokens, and it just this allows them to be able to do it, and uh, and I think the people we really want to convince are still procurement
I think you're
who.
right. Yeah, I think you're right, Karan. Um, and I think, you know, that poll data is probably what, Liam, 2 months out of date now. I think things are continue to evolve, and this conversation has helped to evolve them. But shall we take a peek at the results?
Let's go number two. Yes.
Not the
We
number.
all want that to happen. Let's
Yeah.
no, no, let's be very honest. We all want that to happen. I think
Oh,
it's
I
the
don't know.
timeline. You know,
No,
um,
if I had been allowed to vote, I probably would have said that it's a general pattern that would be widely
oh,
adopted.
no, no, that's what I mean. Like this will get this. We're not at the peak of token-based pricing. We are nowhere even close to it right now. AI is still getting allocated seed base for a lot of people. So I think tokens are still in their infancy. I think this will get way, way, way more adopted before it actually changes the narrative into something that's more value-based, etc. But you can still value price a token. So, anyways, I'll stop with that.
Absolutely. And I think one of the places where we're seeing a lot of credit-based pricing is in vibe coding. So, Karan, you commented earlier that you're doing vibe coding a lot. For people
Yeah.
who are new to the term, can you explain to us what vibe coding is?
Yeah, it was new to me until I started using it as well. So, vibe coding at the end of the day is basically how is coding just like the way you use ChatGPT, for example, for right now. And it allows you to code without a lot of knowledge of coding and allows you to build things you want to build with much ease than any point in history. And I do that a lot. And I think I'm pretty confident. There are a lot of at this point there are probably a lot of sub we always talk about ARR and MRR. I think there are probably a lot of businesses that are touching $1 million ARR that are probably were wipe coded. A thing that probably would have taken a technical founder, a business founder, and a couple of people to get together, get funding to build. And that's how basically vibe coding is. You start with prompts, you give a structure, you ask questions, you build something, you refine it. I mean, is it going to replace a $2 million software? No, not yet. Maybe potentially in the future, but I think it does put at risk a lot of B2B companies in that there's 10 people are using a tool in a company. It's like $200 a fee, a month license or whatever, or 500 annually, and it's for a very specific use case. Those tools are just a few good sessions of vibe coding with someone who's a little bit more knowledgeable away from getting destroyed.
Karan,
Um,
what is something you've built?
I built a couple of things. So I built the front end of our Pricing Tribe community. If you go on pricingtribe.com, you'll see the front end of the website and the back end of the website is all vibe coded. So what happens is like it's actually nice. So someone goes, registers, that goes through into a database at the back. It sends them a welcome email saying, "Hey, you registered, your application is in process," etc. Something that I could have never imagined that I would be able to do like even a year ago. Then it has also the feature I can build dashboards off it. So that's one. But at the same time, I'm also trying to build tools around pricing and promotions, etc., where I'm saying, hey, I upload some promotion calendar? Can I add sales data to it? Can I add some scrape website scraper? I can add a website scraper to it that can scrape prices. Can I build into and I'm almost like building sort of a tool that will help me with pricing and promotions. Is it is it is it is it is it going to replace a big tool for someone? No, but it will serve a lot of use cases if I keep at it. So and I can share more. I can share it with you, and I can share those tools with you. It's I just think the possibility of what you can build with vibe coding is quite endless at this point, and that's why the company like Lovable is becoming one of the fastest growing companies because allowing a lot of people who wanted to build. And it's also not about building software. It's like prototyping. I want my product team to build something. Product marketers back in the days could not had to explain it in a chart and tell you this is the button. Now they can just go and build it and say, hey, build me this for me product. So it's allowing people to prototype, allowing people to build pricing scrapers, allowing people to build, pricing tools for sheets, run all sorts of complicated things that I don't think was possible in the past. And we are at probably the worst generation of vibe coding, as Steven pointed out before. It will only get better. So I'm very pro of the technology in general. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, and just before Mark, you lean in here. So Karen, can you share with us what application you're using to do? What are you vibe coding in?
Oh, so right now I am doing it on Lovable.
Okay.
And then as you start building it, it'll start connecting you to different services that, hey, you need a backend. So, I have a Supabase as a backend, which I didn't know about before. So, now I know a little bit about Supabase. Now I need to know a little bit about Make, about Zapier to run sort of some workflows. So things are getting unlocked. Will it get complicated for me at some point where there's a lot of code and I don't know what maybe? But again, I think that's where the products will also get better to help you at like, hey, and I think for me, the biggest thing that is an asterisk that I know is getting solved, it is solved, is like just making sure the security of it, etc. That's still, I know it's secure. I know it runs all sort of security features, it runs all sort of security protocols. But sometimes just to understand what it's running and what it's doing is a little bit of a challenge, but eventually you get it. So yeah, that's the platform. I would love my next target is to try and use cloud, which I think is even better and has more things you can build off it and different ways to use it. When it can run files, etc., run and read files, etc. So that's the hope. Um, but yeah, Lovable and possibly cloud in the future. So yeah, those two.
Just a quick before I pass the talking stick over to Mark. I was discussing this with Marcus Rivera, and I'll share my sort of thoughts on where this is going to go not after Mark. But So Marcos at Pricing.io, which is one of Ibica's competitors, said that he did a bake-off at Pricing.io between Bolt and a number of different vibe coding apps, including Lovable, and they ended up choosing Bolt. Ibica also is uses Lovable, but then we use Vellum, which is a agentic AI and generative AI middleware application. We use that to do a lot of the deeper engineering that you can't really do in Lovable. But anyway, Mark, your thoughts on vibe coding?
Seriously. So I'm going to talk about pricing of vibe coding, but I don't get, you didn't give me a straw man that I get to beat up, so I'll make my own straw man up.
Okay.
Um, so I hear Steven say a lot that vibe coding is going to, and I don't want to say this wrong, but essentially price itself, right? So we're going to build pricing capabilities into vibe coding. And I have to say I disagree unless we're talking 50 years from now, right? And here I'll give you a couple reasons why. First off, we as in pricing people have no idea how to price something. Right? We spend a ton of time and research and try to figure this out. And so the idea that you're going to ask AI to tell me where the value is and what it is that we're doing for that customer and that situation, I find that so unbelievable today that I don't trust AI to create anything for me. I trust AI to synthesize a lot of things for me. And so every time I have a conversation with it, it says things that are stupid or wrong or right, not good enough. So I don't believe it's going to be able to do that. Now, that said, let me give you a huge, huge plus that I think we can do with vibe coding. I think that prior to vibe coding, the two biggest things that were missing in almost every software application that was ever created was the fact that we didn't metric usage well enough throughout that product, and um, and we didn't put flags on features that we could turn on and off easily enough. And I think that if you use vibe coding to do those two things, it provides a ton of power to the pricing and the product teams. So we now can create and more versions of our products and capture more value from our individual customers as we figure out what pricing looks like.
Yeah. Okay. So Mark, do you know the website longbets.org?
I do.
Let's put a bet on long bets. And I'll work with you on what the bet is. And we can figure out a bet on long bets because I don't think we're talking 50 years. Um, and there's no point in you and I doing a bet that's 50 years from
I was
now.
going to say, I won't be alive then.
But so I'll work out a bet. I was talking to Michael Mansard at Zuora last week, I think, and he had an interesting point. He said that going forward, all business software should have a value model embedded in it, and which is something that I'm going to try to get Michael on a webinar to discuss. Mark, you might want to get him on a podcast to discuss. But that's a really interesting idea. But I would submit if you have a value model and you have all of um, the telemetry, the data tracking that you're talking about, Mark, you're not far from being able to get to pricing. But so it's just some of my own thoughts on this, which is, you know, one of the really interesting quotes. I was on a an internal session with a uh, venture capital slash private equity, more of a venture capital company. And they had the CEOs of about 20 of their portfolio companies talking about the impact of generative AI and agents on their business. And one of the guys said something like the following. He said, and this is a guy who's running about a 50 million annual recurring revenue business, probably 200 people. So not a big company, but not tiny either. And he said that, with vibe coding, he is able to create all of the sales insights and rev ops functionality that he needs. And as far as he's concerned, the CRM is just a dumb database, and he is downgrading every subscription that he can so that to the very basic pieces, so that he only has the cheapest possible version of the application. He's still using it as these things as systems of record, but he is not willing to pay for all of the advanced features anymore because he can vibe code better ones faster. And another thing that is becoming more and more common, or we're seeing more talk of, is headless applications. So headless CRMs, headless content management systems, and it's basically a CRM with no user interface. The assumption being that you're going to vibe code the user interface that makes sense for your business. So if this is true, and it's true for this guy anyway. I'm not sure how successful he is with it, but let's just assume for the moment that he's successful. This has a lot of implications for the pricing of B2B software. We, as pricing people, we've always said, create differentiation, drive differentiation. Differentiation is what gives you pricing power. Differentiation is what drives up willingness to pay. Is vibe coding going to pull that rug out from under us so that differentiation becomes harder to create, harder to establish, and impossible to maintain? So that, whereas differentiation, might have lasted 5 or 6 years back in client server days, and a year plus in conventional B2B SaaS, we're now talking about differentiation lasting for days. And you can't really price something that, is only going to be differentiated for days. So I think, and I don't think I've thought this through, and I don't think I understand it yet, but I think that the grounds for competition are going to change a lot in 2026 because of vibe coding.
Yeah.
But what do you guys think? Am I blowing
I
smoke
do
here?
think no, I think protecting IP for new softwares and tools is going to be impossible because any at least small use cases, not bigger infrastructures and platform sector, but small use cases, tools that lets you, build something for your SCM spend, or something that basically lets you see your, whatever small part of your business, etc. Those are going to get impossible to IP protect and impossible to differentiate. I think more and more of this is going to happen. More and more people are going to build and become builders for sure. Um, and I think that the theme will change from vibe coding to something else. I feel like that's going to change the next 1 or 2 years because, as Microsoft and a lot of Google and everyone else has now basically said a good chunk of their code is AI written now, which makes it more mainstream than it actually is. And you can see in like companies like Stack Overflow sector that have lost all of their traffic because people are using vibe like these. Vibe coding is a bad sort of term for what is potentially going to be a norm in the future in a way. Um, so I think differentiation is going to be very hard. But I think the two things that will help that is distribution and how deep the roots of your software can get into an organization. The deeper you get, the more ingrained in the infrastructure you get, and harder to replace. So, so though that is probably going to help, but otherwise it's going to be a lot challenging for sure.
Okay.
So,
Just sorry, go ahead,
Stephen,
Mark.
what you just said, I had not thought of before, and I really like the thought. But here's why I really like it. The thought that says, look, if we take everything that's headless and you can go create your own and you don't have to buy, Salesforce. Um, what that really says to me is that expertise becomes more valuable. Right. And so if you look at individual companies, they don't have the expertise to say, hey, how would I do price segmentation in my marketplace? Right. And so now we've got to have somebody that has that expertise to understand their market and price segmentation and whatever we think of for value-based pricing. So I find that really fascinating.
So I think that maybe is a subject for a future podcast, Mark. Um, what are the grounds of differentiation going forward? And is it deep expertise? Because that, you know, certainly worth exploring. But why don't we move on and take a look at the next poll?
For anyone, and I highly recommend for anyone listening, like if you haven't, go on lovable.com and just register. There's a free version. You can start using something. In fact, they have something, you don't have to build something from scratch. You can have, they have already have tools, in fact, things people have built that you can customize for yourself. So financial planners to, daily habit tracking things. People are building, like I know of a friend who's basically running his sort of financials off feeding statements to Claude, for example, and then trying to figure out his, you know, finances and sector. So there's a lot of possibility, but for even for personal tools, things you want to sort of get better at.
Yeah, I only jumped into it a couple of weeks ago, Karan, and I think it's phenomenal. I was just blown away. And I was told yesterday, don't just put in the prompts and get have something get fixed or whatever your issue is, but just yeah, read the responses because you see
Yeah.
some code in there. It's not like, I mean, it'll tell you, yes, okay, I found the error, it's fixed now, but it'll give you so much more because when I was in school, I hated Python. I hated it. That was the my worst subject. Our teacher even said, "Don't worry, we're not going to grade you." Hush, don't say that, don't tell everyone that. But yeah, it just opens up so many doors. And when I started to, create me a button in the top right section for the pull down menu, add the credit system there so it tracks all the credits and how many credits are remaining for the user to see. And then there's a little chart, a little line, how many credits are remaining. And then just designing that is just phenomenal. Make it blue, create that pull down menu and each option that the user can click on, like profile, account settings, features, this, that, and the other, create little icons and make those icons interactive. Maybe it's a star and it just slowly like turns around or it sort of like vibrates. Just the design aspect for it is beautiful. It's crazy. But I mean, again, I was stuck on an error yesterday for 2 hours. I was working with a colleague and we were just stuck on this one thing for 2 hours and we just gave up and we said, okay, we'll try again tomorrow. Let's, maybe the webhooks weren't connecting properly or the credit system wasn't updated on the back end versus the front end. Is Lovable reading everything from the front end versus the back end? Um, I think I finally fixed it last night, and it's just such a rewarding feeling, I think, when you just like, yeah. But did I do it or did Lovable? I mean, sure, Lovable, but creating those specific prompts and just giving it tech context, not just saying make this button look good, but give it a bit more design flair. Anyway, sorry, rambling on.
No, no,
Phenomenal, phenomenal stuff.
yeah, just for people's background. So Liam has actually been implementing the credit-based pricing system for Value IQ into Value IQ using Lovable. And it talks to Stripe billing and so on and so forth. But uh, and Liam is not a hardcore coder. Uh, and anyway, transformative times. But
Hmm.
let's see the results of the poll. Oh, so as Karan said, um, try it. It is well, for a certain type of person anyway, it is enormous freaking fun. Uh, you can test and explore things that you never thought you would be able to do. And Yeah, it's just amazing. And I would have to say that if I had been allowed, or Liam had been allowed to take part in this poll, there would have been at least one response, yes, for core products. Are the Value IQ agents 100% vibe coded? No. They use a Vellum middleware layer, and they wouldn't work. You could not vibe code our agents today. Although Vellum also has some vibe coding functionality in it. You can vibe code middleware in Vellum. Uh, doesn't work perfectly yet, but yeah, there is that possibility. Just before we go on, and we don't have a lot of time left, and I'm actually going to suggest that we flip over to Q&A. But uh, one of my hypotheses is that people doing consulting by mid 2026 will not be delivering PowerPoint decks and spreadsheets. Most consulting deliverables will be vibe coded. And that will lead to a much better experience for the people receiving the consulting. It will be much easier to act on the deliverables. And if you still need the spreadsheet, I'm not sure that you will ever need the PowerPoint, nor am I. I'll comment on PowerPoints in a second. These vibe coding apps will soon be able to, well, they can already in many cases generate the spreadsheet for you. So you will, and because a lot of us are pricing people here, you will vibe code your pricing model, and then you will have your vibe coded pricing model output that as a set of configuration files for your CRM, for your CPQ, for your RevOps system. And because, let's face it, we all love spreadsheets. We wouldn't be doing this if we didn't love spreadsheets. It'll output it into a spreadsheet for you too. So that's, what I think 2026 is going to look like for pricing consultants, and internal pricing consultants as well. So anyone doing pricing will be doing vibe coding in 2026. My prediction. See if I can find someone who will take the other side of that bet on long bets too. I'm not sure if I'll get Mark to go against that one.
I was just going to say, I guess I'll have to retire before that happens because I'm not vibe coding yet.
Yeah, you will be. And you're creating custom chat GPT apps, you said.
I do a lot of custom GPTs, and I could probably do it with vibe coding. I just don't know what the heck I'm doing. So,
Yeah. I'm going to suggest, in the interests of time, Liam, we're going to skip these things. There's details in the deck that we'll distribute. Just quickly on the cost of compute. Just going to back us up. Again, two hypotheses here, right? Cost of compute will go down, so that it will be less of an issue in pricing. One possibility. Second possibility is the cost of individual tokens, or the cost of any individual action will go down according to Moore's law, but the complexity will go up faster than that cost goes down. So that cost of compute is going to become a bigger and bigger issue in pricing, and not a smaller issue. Just quickly, Karan and Mark, do you have a point of view on that? Is cost of
I,
compute going to be less
I,
important
I,
or more important next year?
I think cost of compute is definitely going to be important for sure. I think, but it from a cost perspective, it will go down. But because it's going to get so widely adopted, it's like saying, the cost of transistors went down, but you know what? Instead of using 1,000, people started using 10,000. So I think it's just going to get the overall bill is going to keep climbing because people are. I think the biggest issue is when we are inserting AI into places where we probably wouldn't have in the past, but now we are. And that's just causing more and more compute and more resources to be used, and that's going to cost a lot of companies. And I think the problem that almost all companies needs to figure out is just thinking of this list like Nvidia is $1 trillion. They have sold, I don't even know at this point, like 300-400 billion dollars worth of chips and services into the future, into the next 3 years. So companies better figure out how much revenue they need to make to recoup that cost, or otherwise they're going to be losing money personally while paying Nvidia and AWS and anyone else who's basically computing on their behalf. So it's like saying, when it's a gold rush, you don't you sell shovels. And that's exactly what AWS, NVIDIA, and everyone is doing. They're selling the shovels, and this is what people got to figure out. Make sure they put the AI in the right places, and make sure that the compute bill is manageable. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of. This is the bubble. This is the bubble where everything is inflated in cost and the revenue doesn't match it.
Mark?
Okay, first off, I agree with everything Karan just said. I thought it was brilliant. But I want to add my one controversial thought. Costs don't matter to pricing, therefore I don't care.
I,
That's how we should think. Um, and that's how B2B SaaS operated for the last decade or so. Um, but yeah, Mark, so I having just done this credit-based pricing model for Value IQ, um, costs did impact some of the pricing decisions. I know they
There's
shouldn't. I get it. And man, I'm afraid someone's going to remove my credibility as a value-based pricing guy. But you
so I
got
think
to. I'd like to stay in business.
yeah, where you are, Stephen, is what we talked about at the very beginning, and that is we don't yet know the value we're delivering to our customers. And if we don't know the value, then what are we going to use to set prices? And so costs become part of that conversation. And we certainly want to make sure we cover our costs. I'm totally with you on that. But in truth, willingness to pay is what should be driving our prices.
Yeah, no, I
I,
agree.
I
So,
th- I think Mark, you're right, but I think we need to buy the runway to get to that point because a lot of it's like if you had billions of dollars to burn like OpenAI, so be it. Like, you sell that at 20, like at $20, ChatGPT is a steal. Like, is a steal for the amount of information, the cost that, like the amount of cost it takes to run even smaller queries by now, and the resources it takes. But I think they're just buying bandwidth. They're buying people's usage, and they're going to be so entrenched into people's workflows. Then it's impossible to replace. Just like Uber, when it was so cheap, losing money for 6 years, no one believed. And guess what? After 7 years, no one wanted to take a taxi. And now they can do launch a product, raise a price, and no one will care and care two bits about it. So I think that's where the entrenchment really comes in, and you're buying that runway with that cost with a little bit of a tokens, credit, cost, etc. And eventually you'll switch to your point
Yep.
to WTP and value.
I'm going to call us to an end here. Liam, do you want to wrap things up for us?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, again, just thanks for Karan and Mark joining us again and giving us your time. I really appreciate it, Karan. I know that we took away the 12 o'clock to 1 o'clock because you're East Coast, so sorry that we broke your lunch. Maybe you ate
This
before or
is far
after.
better, far
Okay,
better.
all
This is
right,
far
good,
better.
good, good answer. And I liked Richard's comment, mic drop for what Mark said. That was a good one. But yeah, everyone, that's a lot of good questions in here. So Stephen and I are gonna have to wrap this up in a typical blog post reprise. With the deck that we're gonna send out, there are three new blogs. I didn't update the latest one that Stephen had because I think he posted it right before we started this webinar. So just a reminder, video will be sent, that link will be sent, deck will be sent, and the questions will be answered because there were a lot in here. I can't believe it's already 10 a.m. Pacific time. And to everyone in the US, have a safe and wonderful Thanksgiving. We were actually going to schedule this for next week, but completely forgot because we're in Canada. Forgot it was the US one. But yeah, thanks again, everyone. Thanks for joining in.
Thank you very much,
Thank you.
everyone who participated. Liam and I will comb through the chat. And again, thank you very much, Mark and Karan. And have a wonderful rest of your day and a great Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
From
And what was it, Karan? Pricingtribe.com?
Yeah, pricingtry.com.
Yeah, and
And
then
just
Karan.
just yeah, just use it for like vibe code. If you want to learn anything about how that works, how some of the data is uploaded or whatever, and membership, just it's all there.
Okay. Yeah. And
pricingtribe.com.
then Mark's impactpricing.com. Everyone knows Ibica.com. And then the Value IQ agent that we're working on is valueiq.ai. So check that out. But yeah, we'll send the links as well. Thanks
Okay.
again,
Yep.
everyone.
Thank you.
Everyone.
You
Thanks,
Bye.
appreciate
guys.
it. This is awesome.